Hi, Sarah. Thank you so much for being on the Retail Whore podcast.
Thank you for having me.
You were introduced to us by our friend Barbara, who owns Daisy's Mercantile, who I absolutely adore. And I tell you, she's literally our number one fan, but I'm super gracious to her that she made this introduction because your store is amazing.
Thank you. I mean, Barb is the best. She is retail goals.
How do you know Barbara? It's amazing to me because her reach of people is insane, and it always blows my mind. Like, how did she make all these connections?
That's why she's so good at what she does. She and I were on a panel at New York Now like 4 or 5 years ago at this point. And yeah, I think we just kind of clicked. And then just now we just, whenever we are both at a trade show, we just, try to bump into each other as much as we can.
I love her. She's literally been our number one fan. Like, I can't express that enough. So if you're listening, Barbara.
I'm sure she is.
So tell us a little bit about yourself and your store, Occasionette.
Yeah, so Occasionette, I started in 2013 in South Philly and opened my first store. And at the time, I also had a line of tea towels that I would wholesale to other businesses, other small shops. And this storefront opened up a couple blocks from my house, and I knew that there wasn't like a place in the neighborhood to like grab a quick birthday present on your way to meet your friends for drinks, or grab a birthday card, or just anywhere to really just like poke around that wasn't like clothing. And even there wasn't much retail in general in the neighborhood, but there were a lot of good restaurants and bars. And then, yeah, a couple of years later, I moved across the river to Collingswood, New Jersey, and felt exactly the same way about Collingswood, where if I forgot to bring home, a housewarming present over the weekend, there was nowhere on that side of the river to go get, a little gift for someone. And Collingswood is, we like to joke that it's kind of a Stars Hollow, cute little, perfect little town. And so, I kind of set my sight on a space right in the middle of town that was, for all intents and purposes, abandoned, big storefront. And so, yeah, I opened that one in 2017. And then in 2020, a retail spot just a couple doors down from that store opened up. I was worried about not being able to have as much foot traffic in the shop because of limitations due to COVID. And so I knew more square footage would benefit us. And so I took that lease on, and we've since made that shop into kids, gifts for tiny humans and babies. So I have two shops in Collingswood. And then just last week, we opened our fourth location in the Chestnut Hill neighborhood in Philadelphia.
That is amazing. I mean, we'd said off camera that I was out in Philly and I was dying to go because much like California, people don't realize how big places are. So I'm like, oh, I'll just stop on by. I'm like, no. I was so because I mean, your space is like, for me as a retailer, like I've been in the industry for 40 plus years, and it's like I had stores at Fritz Eagle and I was with Anthro, and you get kind of jaded with some, and it's like it takes a lot for me to really to get gobsmacked. So like looking at your stores, like I am like literally gobsmacked. And I'll ask you because I think Barbara had said your store that's now Baby and Tiny Humans, it was something different during the pandemic, correct?
Yeah, so we called it Joy Shop the whole time because when I first signed the lease, it was, the fall of 2020, September, October, everyone just the world felt super heavy.
And
There were no vaccines yet. It was, right before the election. It was just like a really heavy, hard time. And so we called it Joy Shop, and we decided it was everything you needed to kind of like pick yourself up, and just kind of take care of yourself. And so, we had chocolate, we had tea, we had journals, we have face masks, we had, all kinds of things to just things you could do at home, things you could do by yourself, basically, just to kind of be a little bright spot in your day. In beginning of this summer of 2022, we just really noticed a need in the neighborhood for, all the people walking around with strollers. And so we changed it over to baby and kids this summer.
so okay, there's so much there I want to talk about. The fact that you open a store we were still in a major pandemic. Like that's ballsy. Like what, like, I mean, really, I mean, it's like, I think when everyone is freaking out because no one's allowed to have people in their store, and here you are opening a brand new store.
Yeah, my reaction was, wait, we're only going to be allowed to have 12 shoppers in based on our square footage. Well, then I need more square footage because I need more than 12 shoppers. That was kind of my line of thinking.
And the other part that I love, because this is like my favorite thing, when in doubt, color it out. Like your whole store, the whole Joy Shop was colored out. So well done. That's, I think, when I was like totally enamored with your store. I'm like, oh my God, it's so good. Cause coloring out, to me, it's like always one of my rules of thumb. It's like, if you have a bunch of random things, when they're all colored out, it's not random. It's like so beautiful. And it was like, so well. So how hard was it? Because you had a full store of inventory, you didn't put anything on sale, and then you transitioned into a whole net. So how did you
We
do?
did a quickie sale in between. We did a sale for like 2 or 3 days after
That was
Mother's
like a
Day.
promo though. It didn't really feel like a
Yeah.
sale. Like,
No, it wasn't like we were trying to clearance everything out or anything. We did like a quickie to try to get rid of some inventory, but we had 2 other locations, so we could just like reallocate and kind of move things around. And so we basically just did like kind of a flip-flop, a switch, because we had pretty substantial kids section in the shop down the street from Joy Shop. And so, we had that much, shelf space left when we moved all of that kids stuff into Joy Shop. So we just kind of like flip-flopped it more or less.
how
But the thing I didn't anticipate with the color blocking was buying was really tricky, because, you definitely, when you're that in tune to the colors, notice packaging trends.
yeah,
I didn't anticipate that some colors were just like nearly impossible to find things for, just because like apparently purple is just not a popular packaging color right now.
that's so funny, because I didn't even think about that, because I will color out with existing products that we already have versus you're actually going to show searching out things in that color palette. Wow, I can't even imagine.
Yeah, so that was hard because we did it by color for at least a year. And yeah, that was rough. Like, oh hey, the blue table is looking real sad right now. Like, and I was like, all right, well, let's figure out how to buy more, blue. Like, what's selling well on the blue table? Let's figure this out.
So how do you even do that when there's no shows? Are you like Googling blue products?
We were using
Blue table?
fair for a lot of stuff, and just hoping that product photos were accurate.
Oh my God, hilarious. So now with the new store, how is the baby store doing, and how have you, was there any confusion to the customers, or did you guys just work within
A
each other?
little bit. Collingswood is like such a small town. I think it's like 13,000 people. So word travels pretty fast there. And to Collingswood's credit, it loves supporting local. Like, I mean, everywhere does, but Collingswood in particular loves shopping local. So it was like not too hard locally to get the word out that we, we're changing over. We still would have like, the odd person who just, wanders in and they hadn't been in since holiday and it's, a couple months out. And so they, would come in and be like, oh, this is not what I thought it was. And like, yeah, just point them down the street. Like, oh, I think the CBD stuff you're looking for is probably just in the other shop now. Like all our best sellers are just over there now, so that wasn't, too bad. It's not like we didn't have somewhere to send them. So that was fine. And the kid shop is doing great. It's really, really fun. Like it was really fun to like paint all the murals and do, the switch over and
Cute.
yeah, and really like, design all the new fixtures and just make it come to life. So that's been really, really fun.
Your brand, is it your candle line that's got the repeat pattern that you also did the paper that you covered the windows in?
Yeah.
Brilliant, brilliant, by the way. So tell me a little bit about how you developed that.
So our branding was actually done in 2019 by a local design firm called the Heads of State, who I sort of fell into following because one of the lines we carried called Wonder Made Marshmallows, which they're based in Florida, but they had used the Heads of State to design their packaging. And Wonder Made Marshmallows, their packaging is just chef's kiss. It's perfect. It's just really, really sweet. It's like, in my mind, one of the most ultimate Occasionette packaging. So, when I realized that the firm that designed it was based here in Philly, it was just a no-brainer to reach out to them and see if they wanted to do our branding when we were ready to do that in 2019. And we, at that time, didn't have a website. I was not interested in having a website or e-commerce or anything. But it was really, 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 I'm so happy that we had such strong branding in place when we had to go online only the following year, because it just made what we did so much easier to transition to online, because our branding basically didn't exist prior to that.
That we had a branding docs design on, and she does a lot of the repeat patterns, and it's like they're so whimsical and so good. And it's like she had said, so many retailers open up and they design their own logo on Canva, and it's like 7 years later and you're looking around like, oh my God, I still have it, including myself, my old logo, like you still shitty handmade thing. And like now it's like, and to have it, I think that's what's so beautiful about one of the things that's so beautiful about your brand is that, it is so cohesive in its branding, from the paper that you cover the window up to your bags, to your tissue, to your, like all of it. And I think that that's so key to retail. And I think so many people skip that step because it is extra money.
It took me 5 or 6 years to get there. I mean, I did basically exactly what you said. I didn't use Canva. I don't think it existed at the time, but basically everything else you said is exactly what I did. Like in 2013, it took me 5 or 6 years to, it was an investment. It was, like hand picking the designers that I knew I wanted to work with, and, going with them and just letting them do this whole suite of like the pattern, the, the brand mark, the, the little, just all of it was definitely not inexpensive, but, it's something we'll keep for a long time. We absolutely love it. We use it, like you mentioned, in every single way we can. We have it on gift wrap, we have it on our bags, we have it on our private label stuff now, we have it just absolutely everywhere. And it was such a good investment. And like, it just is like the power of hiring a professional who does what they do for a living is so important.
Yeah, I just talked to a retail consultant, and she was talking about how retailers don't want to hire merchandisers. Like if they're not like good merchandisers like yourself, and like, the fear and the cost that goes along with it. And it's like the payback is so much, and not to mention like well, this like it came up when I was in Philly, because I changed their whole entire floor plan, and we re-merchandised everything, and it was like so beautiful and cohesive, and all these people on Instagram were like, but how are they keeping it up? Like, your inventory comes in, they do a ton of volume. And I think that a lot of people, their fear is bringing something like a merchandiser in, and it's like, it looks beautiful and then they can't maintain it. And it's like the whole key of hiring a professional is to keep the professional, coming, which is why I introduced my friend Sue, so they can keep up the look now and roll it out to all their locations. But it's funny, it's like that fear of the cost, but the outcome outweighs like.
Absolutely. I mean, one thing I've found over and over and over again is that, when I make these investments, and they're not, spur of the moment, they're not, what's the word I'm looking for? It's not impulse buy by any means, but, when I finally am like, all right, I need to make the leap, I need to make this investment, I always kind of feel like, well, are we ready? Like, I feel like you have to do things like that a little bit before you feel 100% ready, because that's what's going to help you get to the next level.
Yeah.
You just kind of have to trust that, your business is worth that investment. And if it's not, you have to kind of wonder, why am I doing this at all?
Good point. I'm in the process of developing a online or a subscription-based platform to teach retailers how to merchandise. And it's because what's out there is not, I mean, no offense everybody, but is not great. And they're filmed in like perfect situations. So we have the perfect amount of inventory. So it always, where we're doing the classes, we're filming like in real life situations with real inventory and real, like, okay, that didn't work. What are we going to do now? And it's like, but I had to bite the bullet and hire. I'm bringing on one of the girls that was on the ground floor of Shopify, and it's like, it is the scariest thing in the world to me. And I finally was like to myself, like, if it doesn't scare you, it's not big enough. And it's like, I have to get out of my own way, because if I kept it to me trying to do it, it's like, it will literally sit there forever. So I took my own advice, and I'm getting really uncomfortable. Like,
Yeah. Yeah.
so I have to, okay, there's so much I want to ask you about your store. First, I'm going to start with your private label, because again, you utilize your branding for your private label. I'm looking at all these masked out candles and the same pattern, which just to me is like the ultimate in merchandising, because it's like you're driving home that look of abundance, and it's your branding. Tell me a little bit about how you started in private label and what you have rolled out that's Occasionette.
We fell in love with this one candle that was poured by a candle maker in Michigan, and it's lavender pumpkin. And we were just like, it's such a wacky combination. Like
It
lavender
is.
pumpkin is a wacky combination,
It
but we would sell out every year. And we just finally were like, once we had our, branding in place, I think 2020 was the first year we did those private label. And we were just like, I wasn't fully in love with this maker's label to begin with. And I was like, instead of ordering, a couple hundred of these candles with a label that I don't love, let me see if she'll just slap one of our labels on it. And that's the really nice thing. My favorite thing about this job, in part is like working with really small vendors that get to know them. You're not like working with some giant company where everything's impossible. It's really easy to do. So, it's just a simple email. Hey, how's it going? Like, this is how many I wanted to order. What would it look like if we were to ask you to put on labels with our branding? Like, would you want it to be co-branded, blah, blah, blah. Like, worked out all the details with her. And then it just took off, and people just were really even more receptive to the lavender pumpkin. I mean, it was like a top seller before, but we
That's
like
such a weird
doubled down
scent.
on it. It's such a weird scent. Someone online, one of our Instagram commenters called it the spa pumpkin candle. Yeah, that's kind of it.
I mean, what
Um,
is the lavender more? I mean, not to go down the road of the candle,
so
but
it's
is it
it's
more
definitely
lavender?
like a more like a richer lavender. Like it's not like a soapy lavender. I don't know how to. I'm not good at describing. I'm not good at
I'm gonna
describing.
need to order one, because I'm
But
like,
yeah, I should just send you one. But I think the thing that we learned was that like our customers, kind of at that point basically trusted that they saw that we got behind this candle and we're like, hey, we're like putting the Occasionette name on it. This is a candle we adore. And be like, we're just gonna straight up tell you need this candle. And so we ever since then have been selling just hundreds of them in the fall. And it's been really, really fun.
I mean, I mean, there is something to be said about how much you put out. I mean, and it's like, there's one of those things that I talk to retailers a lot about is like, people that were like, oh, we only ordered 2. And it's like, well, it kind of looks like you're not really in it. And it's also when one person buys one, then you have this one random, it's like sixes at least. Like it's, I'm doing a store opening for somebody, and they have 2 locations, and they've split all their Jellycat. Well, Jellycat only ships in 4s. So I have all these miscellaneous, and their stores are right around the corner from each other. I'm like, okay, we're going to regroup all the plush again. One store is getting 4s of one style, and the other store is getting 4s of the other styles. And then you can start saying, oh, if you want more Jellycat, they're at the other location to get that cross. Because 2 Jellycat, 2, it's like, it just ends up like everyone's going to buy one, and then it's going to be like this mosh pit of like miscellaneous
Yeah,
Jellycat.
that hurts my heart. Like I hate hearing two because I'm also like as a buyer, like how do you know if something's a fluke? Like if you only need to sell like if you're only selling 2 of something, like how do you know if something is actually going to be a top seller for you? You don't because you
Yeah.
only had to sell 2 of them. You only
Yeah.
had the opportunity to sell 2 of them.
So
It's
you're seeing your merchandising, and that abundance factor that I talk about a lot is like, it is a perfect example. And it literally, what people don't realize, and not that you have to put out this much inventory of everything, but what people don't understand and realize is that when there's something that abundant, that literally is like people are drawn to that, like, oh my God, what is this? There's so much of it. They must love it.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, we literally in each location had about over 200 pumpkin lavender candles. And I would say at least 75% of them went out on the floor the first day we merged. You know, like we're such a stack 'em high, watch 'em fly. And,
Okay,
you know,
my favorite saying.
yeah.
Thank you.
You know, and I think it's also important to note though that like, you know, we do have maybe a handful of other pumpkin candles. Like we're not trying to push lavender on every single person. Some
But
people
it's yours.
sure maybe are silly and don't like it. But you know, we probably only ordered, you know, sixes or well, not sixes, knowing me, it's 12s. In all of the other, you know, pumpkin scents. You know, because it's not, I'm not crazy. I'm not gonna go 200 deep into 7 different varieties of pumpkin candles.
But it's yours. So that's the
It's
important.
ours.
And that's, I think that so what else do you private label?
We do some cocktail mixers, which is really fun.
Love.
We do private label. Oh, we do some shower steamers. We do we have a lot of things done custom for us that are not necessarily private label, but that we design in-house and work with. Like we have like some pillows that are, you know, Philly themed that we do. We have my line of tea towels. I still, you know,
What's
draw
your
tea
tea
towels.
towels?
It's called Girls Can Tell. And that was sort of my entry into the retail industry. And I sold that business in 2018. But it's still one of our top selling lines. I still, you know, order them religiously, but you know, and I do draw exclusive designs just for our shops, you know, that are very like neighborhood based. It's sort of like architectural inspired illustrations.
I love that. So
Yeah.
tell me a little bit about how you approach concepting and because the store looks like, you know, within all the gifts is obviously curated very well, and it looks like you clearly go out with intention to create some type of concept. So tell me, give me a little bit of your background, your strategy when you are creating new concepts and hitting the shows.
Yeah, so we, you know, sit down and work a couple seasons out, and we, you know, have a floor plan of each of the stores, and we kind of map out, you know, what stories we want where, you know, what we want to really feature hard, what we kind of want to pull back on, and we, you know, assign tables accordingly. And then, you know, we go to the show, and we're flexible once we are at the show in terms of, you know, what we find, you know, if we're, you know, something really strikes us and we're like, ooh, let's scrap that as an idea and kind of switch it over to this kind of theme instead. And that it's nice. Our merching and our buying are very, very much like intertwined. You know,
Important.
since we're working, you know, our teams are working together constantly. But you know, I think it's definitely we've gotten more conscious of planning ahead, you know, and having a good idea before we even set foot at a show. You know, like ideally in November, we're probably going to map out at least the first half of next year, if not most of next year.
Holy shit! Wow.
We usually it's usually summer and fall that we're like fall by the wayside. Like we'll start the year really strong. We'll usually get through like Mother's Day. And then I like to do holiday in November, December, because that's when it's fresh in my head. So, you know, we're planning like 13, 14 months out for holiday, just so that we can, I don't know, be in the spirit and not be planning it out when, you know, lilies are blooming and stuff like that. Like I'd rather do it during the holidays.
Great. I mean, that's really, I mean, I don't even plan that far ahead with I mean, I love seeing all the maps of all the floor plans behind you on the stores. Like you guys are obviously, I mean, having
I didn't even plan that, but yeah.
Yeah, I mean, if having 4 locations, it's not like you can just like do the fly by the seat of your pants and be like, oh, on a whim, let's do this today. Do you work with an open to buy person, or do you have a very good handle on your report?
I don't. I'm like intrigued by open to buy. I need to learn more about it if I'm being totally honest. I have friends, you know, in the industry who swear by it. It's just something I've never like never really looked into, never really committed into, but I feel like eventually maybe we'll get there. But then I'm also kind of like, I don't know, what I'm doing is not broken. So, so
Yeah, I
maybe
mean,
I'll
it
just
sounds like
keep
you
doing
have a
this.
good, I mean, do you go off of reports?
Yeah.
So
Yeah. Like we definitely identify like what categories are really strong, what categories are growing. We also, we look at a lot of like item reports, variant reports, category, we kind of like drill down, to see what's doing really well. The thing we've been really fortunate with is that remains to be seen with our brand new location, but our South Philly location and our main Collingswood shop, really, it's the overlap is like if you were to draw a Venn diagram, it's like very, very, very close, like what are strong sellers. So it's not too often that something is a total hit at one store and a total miss at the other. So that really helps in terms of being able to really kind of like mirror, stories from store to store versus, we don't really have to reinvent the wheel a lot. In terms of merchandising, we do because the stores are so vastly different in size. Our Collingswood store is about twice the size of our Philly store, our first Philly store. But in terms of actual product, the nice thing is that like, we kind of know what goes together, and what we want to feature and what we want, what we want front and center, that kind of thing.
how big is your team? Because you obviously have merchandisers and, buyers. Like, so kind of talk a little bit about your team and how everybody's function works together.
So we have a director of merchandise who's been with us forever, and she is also our private label wizard. She's on the other side of the room, so she can hear me. And so she does a lot of the graphics for, a lot of our private label stuff, custom stuff, that kind of thing. So we're very, very fortunate in that sense. So she does a lot of the coordinating buying, coordinating with the warehouse, what's in and everything. And then she has an assistant. So they also do jewelry and card buying. And then on the merchandising side, we have a merchandiser who does like just product sets in all of the stores. And she also has an assistant. And so they, are just constantly grabbing things from the warehouse that are ready to go out and just refreshing existing tables. And then a couple times a year, we really do, a full like clear every surface, like full reset. We just
Love
did one
those.
for fall. I mean, that's my favorite days of the year.
Me too.
Yeah, we just did fall, and we, will be doing holiday on October 17th. We start one store, we're staggering it. The 19th we'll start the second store, and the 24th we'll start the new store.
Do you do sets overnights or do you do them during?
We don't. I feel like we're not too far away from doing them overnight. Like I feel like we'll probably get there in a couple of years, but right now we just, for holidays, the only time of year we close. For this year we're closing for 3 days. We usually close for
Wow.
2. I'm pregnant, so I'm like only half
Uh,
half a useful person at this point. But for fall and stuff, we usually just come in and start as early as we can in the morning. And then the stores open at 11. And we've kind of noticed that like our sales are always a little bit up on days that we have created total chaos in the
100%.
store.
Yeah. It,
Customers love it. Either they don't notice and you can be like, oh, pardon our mess. And they're like, huh?
yeah.
Which I'm like, don't you notice the 1,000 bins on the floor? Or they totally are like drawn to the mess and are shopping the bins, which is
Yep.
like, well, I mean, we're not Aldi, so we don't love that, but whatever. Like, we're happy you're shopping.
I
Um,
my background's Fred Siegel. Like Fred was my mentor. I had stores there for years, and Fred's philosophy and was always using this term is energy creates energy.
yes.
He was like, open your boxes on the floor, get them out, because people would come like, oh, what are you opening up? And like hands down, and you'd be like, I can't even, I mean, I would be of course annoyed because I can't get my job done. But I mean, the sales, it's true. And it's like, I've said this before on one of the solo casts, is that what retailers don't understand and what is the most annoying thing ever is like walking into a store that A, has no music playing, or a showroom or a show space. There's no one else in the store, and the employee is like behind the counter or standing listfully over in the corner.
I'm so glad you said behind the counter. It's our number one thing we're constantly telling our customer service team is get out from behind the counter. we know it's like tempting. We know it's like the kitchen island of the store and everyone wants to gather around it, but like, no, get out. You have to be on the sales floor.
I used to tell my staff, this is not the ship that's going to save you when it goes down. Like you actually want to get the hell away from it. Like, and it got to the point where I walk on the sales floor and you'd see everyone like, but it's, I mean, that energy of like seeing something going on it's true. It's energy creates energy. So I can completely understand. It's hard to merchandise like that. Cause I mean, I keep my old anthro hour. So I'll go in at 5, 6, if we have overnights we do for a big supermarket chain that we do all their deep decor and believe it or not, but we have to do overnights then. But for the most part, I try and go in really early. We disrupt everything, turn everything upside down. So at least by the time the store's open, there's still some small piles, but it's not like,
Yeah.
I'm sorry, you're going to trip over everything.
Yeah, that's kind of where we're at, is it should be like 75-80% done by the time the doors open in the morning. So it's not, it is somewhat shoppable. It is,
So tell me what holiday at Occasionette looks like.
holiday Occasionette. I like it gives me like the shivers. Like I love holiday Occasionette the best.
Okay, so
It's magical. The hardest part for me, I think, is when I fall in love with how it, a part of it felt one year and I just want to keep doing like that. And so it's like hard to keep trying to reinvent when I like, particularly loved something we did last year. And I'm like, okay, how can I change it up but make it like how do I top that? Because like I love that. And I don't, I want to try to recreate like how good it was, but like what can we do instead of like, bunting at the top of the table? What can we do that's like different, that'll feel different, but that still feels like magical? Um, we definitely carry through some of our themes from year to year. Like last year or I guess the past 2 years, we've had a woodsy, theme. We like to make really dumb table names for ourselves to keep our
hey,
buying team occupied in the
works.
office. So one of our tables, was it last year, was Mad About Plaid in the Woods. And so we had like a very like tartan meets outdoorsy, woods theme going on. And that was really fun. And that was, I think, my favorite table last year. But we noticed that, like sort of national park woodsy theme had done really well the year before. So we kind of like expanded on that. So that's definitely coming back this year. And that was a really fun table because we had like big, tall, like birch poles and, as like sort of stakes in the corners to give the table like a lot of height. And then we like, did bunting in between. And it was just like a really, really nice, like had a really good presence, that table. We had these really long, we have 2 really long 12-foot tables in the Collingswood shop. And so it just was like a really nice like anchor for the space. And so that's one that I'm like, oh, how are we going to top that? This, like, we have the same theme. How am I going to make it feel different, but feel just as magical? And then we do have some private label hot cocoa, which has been really, really popular.
Cute.
And the labels on those are adorable because other Sara, director of merchandise, does them, and they're like my favorite label that we do. And so we're sort of using them to anchor a table that's all sweets and chocolate and, like hot cocoa bar themed this year. So, we're definitely trying to figure out what we want to do visually to really like, make that table sort of another like equal and opposite to woodsy, basically.
Do you do a lot of trees? And then, or if you are you doing ornaments or?
We've had years where we literally have 0 Christmas trees in the stores. And then like it takes me a minute. And then like a week or so after we merge, I'll stand back and I'll be like, wait, oh yeah, there's not a single Christmas tree. What were we doing? I don't know. In my mind, I'm like, are they too literal? Is that why I don't like, am I just tired of them? Like maybe we've done them before and I'm just sick of them. Maybe I feel like they kind of just, every store looks like has a Christmas tree. So it's not like, I don't know, sort of abstract enough for me to be interested in that. But last year we put Christmas trees in some of the shop windows, which was fun. We did like, the real like 60s glitter, like aluminum trees in the windows, which was fun. We display our ornaments just on pegboard. So we will just have like a wall, it's dense, We will just have a peg wall just full of ornaments, which people just really love to shop. I think it's more shoppable than a tree because you kind of have all of your, choices. Just, I mean, I'm an architecture nerd. I love just like give me a grid. And so with that, we just will have like a nice little grid of ornaments.
Well, again, like I think you talk about that abundance factor, and when you have that much and you're standing in front of it, because it's like for me, like I finally gave up on, because I do, one of my accounts is a 5-store pharmacy, and it's like I was doing ornaments before, but it was my own philosophy of like, you're either in it or you're out it, and it was like it wasn't enough of anything to translate to anything. So it was like, all right, we're not doing holiday anymore, because we can't put that much of the budget to that money. So, I had the same philosophy with spa. It's like I tried to do spa, but it's like you really need to do, if you're gonna do something like that, it needs to be deep and it needs to be abundant. And it's like you can't do like an end cap and call it spa. I was like, all right, we're done with that. Like, but it's interesting, like and I love the idea of the grid, having that out, because it's architectural, like you said, and it's like massed out.
Yeah. Yeah.
Do you so you guys set holiday in October? When is it finally up in how many, it takes 3 days each location?
Yeah. So, so one store will be done the 19th, one will be done whatever that Friday is, the 21st. And then the newest store will be done the 26th, I guess. And then the kids store, is a lot lighter of a holiday reset. And so that'll be, we'll do that on Halloween Day. We're just doing that as a 1 day. And so that'll be done on Halloween Day, because I am a total jerk. I'm obviously a Christmas person and not a Halloween person. I feel you're either or. And as sort of a little mini protest to how Collingswood observes Halloween, all of our stores in Collingswood will be closed on Halloween.
Oh my
They
God.
want the business owners to give out 2,000 to 3,000 pieces of candy. The street is mobbed shoulder to shoulder with tiny children. No shoppers are coming in, and yet they want me to pay my team to give out $800 worth of candy. No, thank you. I will just not be open that day. I'm opting out. Like,
good for you. And your staff
I
probably
did
loves
it the
that
first couple of years. It was like kind of cute, but our sales are like literally nothing. It's a horrible day. So we're just going to take advantage of using that day to reset the kids store and just have a day off at the Collingswood store.
I'm sure your staff loves that, having Halloween.
So, I mean, I definitely feel like the Grinch of Halloween, but I've talked to many bid meetings about it and no one cares. So.
Yeah, I'm not a fan of Halloween, and let alone having to be forced to do that. Then it'd be like, and I, between you and I and the wall, like I don't like kids.
I like my own kid.
I will admit that. See, I don't have kids, and
then you don't have to like any kids. You're good.
I feel like the meanest person on earth. I mean, I'm nice to them, and I say, but it's like I don't have them, and there's a reason. I think Anthro did that to me, though. Like all the years of like having the opening statement and the opening platform, and having the mom shopping, paying no attention, and the kid, everyone's like, it's not the kid's fault. I'm like, yeah, but that's what I equated to. It's like the kid climbing all over, pulling something down. Like, so there you go. I'm sure.
I mean, even this morning we went into my Collingswood shop, and we have like ribbons hanging down in the window at the Collingswood shop, and my daughter walks in early this morning, and on the way to daycare we stopped to pick up a gift, and the first thing she said when she walked in the door is, she's 2.5, she said, "Mommy, I definitely want to pull down one of those ribbons." No, please don't.
Yeah,
thank you for asking, but no.
At Anthro they don't ask, and it's like,
yeah, right.
So that has ruined me, and it's like, please don't send me mean email, because I know. I'm admitting it here. Tell me how many departments do you have? Because I know you've got pantry, and I know you do a giant stationery. What are some of the other departments that you have?
Pantry, stationery. We have like a pretty solid bath and body. We have, I'm forgetting everything. We have kids. We have, wait, I can look right next to me at these planograms. We have, holiday. We have box cards make an appearance every year. We have ornaments. We have stocking stuffer. We always have cocktail. We have, what else? Yeah, we always have like a strong seasonal table. We have like jewelry and accessories. Yeah, that's most of it.
I love
Keep these in the way. There's more of it, but I can't read it from here.
I love so much talking to you. I want to talk a little bit about your background because you started at the ground floor of Etsy, correct?
Yep.
So tell me a little bit about how the experience there, what you did, and how it works with what you're doing now. Because you opened retail without having a retail space. So I'm assuming the time at Etsy helped with that.
Yeah, so I was one of the first people to sign up to sell on Etsy, and I was selling my tea towels, and I was a top seller on Etsy for the first couple of years that it existed. And then, so at that point, Etsy was small enough that, the four founders, like, were familiar with me because, I've like post reasonably intelligent questions in their forums, which were not big and crazy at the time. And, I just, was interacting with them because I know it's like hard to imagine, there's only a couple hundred of us using the site as sellers. And so they told me that they got actual office space in Brooklyn. And so I drove up one weekend and, introduced myself in person. Actually, one of them was living in Philly at the time. So then we started hanging out in Philly and going to like, shows and exhibits and things like that, ice cream festivals. And then we, and I was like, hey, you guys should hire me. And I was like half joking because I had a full-time job in architecture at the time and I was, moonlighting with my little Etsy shop. But a couple weeks later, the Rob Kalin, the founder, emailed me and was like, are you still interested in working here? And I was like, sure. I was, young. I was like 24, 25. And so, I was like, yeah, that sounds nice. And so my job was the Etsy teams coordinator, which was basically like their kind of guerrilla marketing street team program. And so I was essentially, my job as a function was like a cross between marketing and community management. And so I did that from 2007 until the end of 2008. And then I was laid off on the night before Thanksgiving in 2008.
Why
Etsy is
is
a company with heart,
why is that
which is the most
when you get
ridiculous
laid
thing in the world.
off? Like that's when I got laid off from a brand that I started, and I got laid off like literally the day before Thanksgiving. It's like, what is that?
It literally felt like it was just literally the last thing on this person's to-do list was, oh yeah, call Sarah and fire her. Like it was wild. My parents were like literally on their way driving to my house. Like, it was like 5:30 at night. And so, yeah, they just didn't want remote workers anymore, was what they said. And so they invited me to apply for basically the exact position that I had been doing, but the requirement was that I had to live in Brooklyn. They were like, oh yeah, if you want to like apply for this position, like you'll get it. You just have to live in Brooklyn. And I was like, no, I own a house in Philadelphia. I have a dog. I have a boyfriend. I'm quite happy. Thank you. Like I can be there in an hour and a half. Like, I don't know why I can't just live here.
And PS,
so,
all those jobs are all remote now anyway. So
yeah, which is they just waffled. So, this was obviously 2008 was forever ago. And so they just waffled so hard between hiring people that lived in St. Louis, lived in California, lived in, Texas. One of the founders lived in Texas at the time, and it just was crazy. They'd waffle so hard between like, we're cool with remote, we're not cool with remote. It's the blessing and curse of working for a startup is, they just go through phases. They're like small children, really. Like they're terrible.
Were you bummed, or was it like?
I kind of told myself that if I could make more selling like my tea towels, ironically on Etsy, than I would have actually working full time for Etsy, that then I gave myself permission to like, okay, then I know I'm like a self-starter enough that I could like make a go of this. And so I like crushed it that, from the rest of the year. And yeah, just rented a shared studio space in Chinatown the, following spring, and just kind of, never had another real job again.
I love a good hustler story so much. Like, yeah. I thank you so much. Okay, I've a last couple questions I always ask everybody is, obviously you're creative. Where do you find inspiration?
I love like when we travel, the thing I'm doing is looking for, other little shops and things. Um, what else? I don't know. I guess I follow a lot of florists on Instagram. So like that's like eye candy that I really enjoy. That's a lot of like color influence and things like that. Um, I don't know. I mean, if I'm being like completely boring, a lot of our stories and themes in the shop are inspired by what has been selling really well and where can we go next with it. So it's not like a, visual creative influence, but it's definitely like a, thoughtful, like, okay, if this is doing well, what's next? Which I think is important too.
Yeah. And then my other question is, this podcast started calling it stories and lessons from a life in retail, because I've spent 40 years here. So what is your biggest lesson in retail?
Uh, I think the biggest lesson is just that the stronger your vision is, the less it matters what anyone around you is doing. Obviously in the years that we've been around, it's not like there aren't any other, shops cropping up in the neighborhoods where we are. We've been among, the first kind of people doing what we're doing in our neighborhoods, but there's going to be the people who are just kind of irritating and trying to do something similar because they see that you're successful. And I used to let it really bother me. I used to get, a little bit more defensive about lines and things like that. And now I just kind of am like, shrug, like, all right, if I'm making it look easy, I know it's not easy, but I think the thing that I've, kind of always go back to and remind myself is that like, we do have a vision, we do have an idea of where we're going and what we want it to look like. And the stronger that is, the less I care about what anyone else is doing. And also just knowing that like we're going to grow and evolve, so like they're always just going to be playing catch up.
I love that. I had did a solo cast, and one of the things was, one of another Fred Siegel piece of advice was, stop worrying about what everybody else is doing and only worry about and focus on you pushing the envelope in your own business, and continue to move it forward, and don't look in the rear view window. So it's so great to hear that, because I think a lot of retailers get really hung up with, well, that person carries this and I don't, that person, we carry the same line. It's like, what everyone doesn't realize is that your own vision, if you have the strong vision, no one else is going to be able to replicate. They may try, but they're not going to, it's never going to be you.
Yeah, and if you're, this is where merchandising obviously plays into it, is like if you're presenting it in a really fresh and interesting way, of course, overlap, strong overlap, lots of overlap on the same street or block or neighborhood is not ideal. But, if you're really merchandising it in like a fresh, interesting way, it doesn't matter as much, and as long as everyone is doing their, staying in their lane and doing what they're supposed to do and following their vision, you can have an overlap of like a half a dozen lines and customers are not going to notice and it's not going to affect things very much.
Thank you. I just spoke the word of God as far as I get started. Sara, thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate, I'm so excited for people to hear this. And I, obviously I'm a fan of your stores, and I pray that I have a chance to go back out to Philly and get to one of your stores. But until then, I am loving what you're doing on Instagram. So I'm like one of your number one fans.
Thank you. Likewise. I've loved watching all of your work in showrooms and things like that. And just, it's been amazing. So keep doing what you're doing too, because it's lovely to see someone else doing it
Thank
well.
you.